Oh,
Right. Uh, hey everybody, it's me, your folk punk dad, here with Alice Fiver. Really excited to talk to her about her new album that's coming out, um, and her EP rather. And Alice, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I guess I'm like folk punk spinster aunt in a sense. I spent years booking and playing folk punk in Las Vegas, Nevada, in a punk band called Alexander the Terrible. And then from there made the transfer over to hip hop, and have been kind of finding how to blend, the ethics and sound of punk rock with the ethics and sound of hip hop, and the little project I do called Lil Lavedy.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. Well, I definitely resonate a lot with that as far as my own music and creativity goes, which definitely has rap and punk and folk elements in it. So, yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about how this EP came about. Can you tell us a little bit of the background, the story behind it?
Yeah, I've been doing a great deal of healing myself as I grow older and more comfortable in myself and my identity. And my last album was a little outdated of who I am, because it was fierce and it was angry, which that is a part of my whole and my humanity. But I've learned a lot more about myself in the process of that, and I really wanted that to get noticed in this album. And it was supposed to represent like the healing process in a more um, open and at times uncomfortable and vulnerable way. So I wanted to talk about grief, and forgiveness has been a great tool for me to grow, and wanted to capture that growth both as a person and as a musician inside this tiny little project. And we all got stuck at home, and this was what I decided to learn how to do when I was stuck at home, was learn how to produce for myself. So everything on the album were instruments that I played. It was stuff that I hand produced, and I played a lot of piano and like guitar and bass and whatnot on the whole thing, and it's just really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think the what you were speaking about with the vulnerability and the openness and rawness and dealing with grief and healing definitely comes through. And I appreciate it. That's one of the things I appreciated most about it. Um, and yeah, and the I love the lo-fi experimental style. I think that really contributes positively to that rawness and that vulnerability, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
right there. It doesn't feel like there's any sort of false facades or it hasn't gone through like a shallow polishing machine. Like it feels like a lot of music out there is like, okay, this just sounds too perfect that I don't even believe it.
And it's funny too, because I was talking with my friend Kristen, and she was like, we were talking about producing and gear and whatnot, and we kind of like bonded over the idea that the gear you have access to, as well as like the tools you have access to, a lot of the times end up building this aesthetic within themselves. And that's something that I learned in folk punk, because I don't think that I intentionally sent out to start playing folk punk music. When I did, I was just a punk teenager who had an acoustic guitar and not couldn't afford much more than that. And that's how I found the community in the first place. And so I most everything that I used to make that album was free. Free VSTs that I found online, or samples or instruments that I already had, and I think I spent $50 on a cheap interface, and that was about it. And that authenticity is what really builds that sound. Like a lot of old punk bands like kind of sound like crap when they get polished over in their later years and stuff, and the remasters don't sound the same if you can't hear the room sound. And I think a lot of the process is what makes an aesthetic and a sound.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that's definitely how a lot of folk punk bands at their start, just like you were talking about, Days and Days, Whitney and Jesse initially just wanted to be a punk band,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't afford, a drum set and electric guitar. So
Yeah.
they made do with what they have, and look what came about with that, with Days and Days. Um, and I think it's so true that often when you put limits on something creative, it actually opens up creative avenues that wouldn't have been there before.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, I didn't have this sound in my head that I was like, I'm going to try and do this. It was more like, how do I make the computer make noise? And
Yeah.
I figured it out from there. And there's also a lyric on that album. It's part of the chorus of the second song. That is, I am only punk, so I've got the wiggle room to make mistakes. It's all on display, all of my cognitive dissonance. I am only punk, so being bad at what I love is an aesthetic choice, not a mistake I made by chain smoking my voice away. And I really wanted to honor the fact that I think punk kind of made it so I was able to look at mistakes with a bit of grace,
Mm.
because that in a sense is kind of like a big underlying point of punk rock. It was about how fast you could play it, or like how sloppy you were. That in a sense was just like allowing grace along mistakes, or separating from the ideal of perfectionism.
Mm, mhm. Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I think that perfectionism can be so destructive in that it can prevent so much from happening. And when
Exactly.
an artist is able to let go of that need to be perfect,
Hmm.
it can be freeing, and you can actually hear and listen to things that are how they're in one way how they were meant to be,
Yeah.
raw or imperfect, but authentic and real and um, totally itself, whatever that looks like.
Hmm. It's funny because even so, there's a like beat drop on the album where I tried really hard to make everything line up, and
Mm,
it just wasn't. And so I didn't I allowed myself to not fight that.
mm,
I looked at that as its perfection, as the way that it was supposed to be.
yeah.
And the more that I it was able to do that with this project, the more that I was able to do that with myself,
Mhm. Yeah.
giving music grace within my music to make mistakes, but also within myself. It's very liberating to offer yourself self-forgiveness. And I think about the folk punk band that I was in, when it was just a two-piece, me on the ukulele plugged in and whatnot, and my friend on the drums. And when we would make mistakes or kind of get lost a little, we'd make direct eye contact, smile at each other, find each other, and go right back to where we were. And we never afterwards sat afterwards oh, we totally messed this up, because what we were focused on was creating an energy. We weren't focused on reciting the songs perfectly for the people. We wanted people to dance and feel as if as if a mistake in their movement was just as okay as a mistake in my movement, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's so wonderful. Yeah, it can be often more about creating the energy, creating the experience, as opposed to, hitting every technical note. And I loved what you were saying about grace in the punk community, and how that really can be seen, I think, as a core value of punk. Just like you were saying, grace, forgiveness, freedom for people to be themselves, without, having to adhere to a strict standard.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, there's nothing less punk than, judging someone based on how not punk they are or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's compassion. I think one of the things that I learned the most from like punk is that like learning that authenticity is multifaceted beyond like what like punk rock aesthetically like says is, you know, like counterculture. You know, it's being your true self has so much potential beyond, you know, like studded belts and whatnot. And the more that I've aged, the more that I always hold on to punk regardless of how much it's actually involved in my life, because it's, you know, it's become such a part of my identity, um that I can't get rid of it, you know. Spend 10 years booking and playing in punk bands, and there's no going back. It makes, you know, when you're a teenager and you're going to DIY ethics, your community, your art, and everything you consume is based around this culture. And then as you age, you kind of, you know, get better risk or get different risk analysis, and, you know, go to punk shows a little bit differently. But the overall like bit still lives in my like your identity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. Um, and I think the good thing about that is, so much of what punk is about is community,
Mm-hmm.
and making a better world in community. So if someone, carries that with them their whole lives, that can be really a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is so much that, um, punk ethics has to offer, that I wish, um, not just other genres would embrace more, um, but also other communities and,
Mm-hmm.
organizations and societies. I think the world has a lot to learn from punk ethics,
Mm-hmm.
and, that's one of the reasons that I've embraced punk and punk music and call myself folk punk dad, is because I can really get behind it. I can really get behind what punk, stands for, and feel good about it.
You know, and we like following through with like community. I think that the first track on this song is meant to like really represent the importance of community, especially when processing grief.
Mhm.
You know, as I've aged and I've watched or hung out with other punks and reconnected with punks, is, you know, grief is something that punks have had to deal with a lot, especially in the past year. You know, I've been having friends of mine that were punks like commit suicide or overdose for years now. And, you know, last year, one hit really close to home, and it I I didn't want it to be like, oh, this is a pain that I'm just going to live with and deal with on my own. I reached out to my community a lot more often than I usually do, and I used, community to be part of that buffer, that there's vulnerability needs safety, and with grief, community goes a long way with building that safety. And so the first song has Jesse Williams, a longtime folk punk musician, and my friend Sheila Wiley, who's also really talented in the genre. And I I wanted us to speak on grief from our own points of views. And so like my first point of view, I start off the song, and it's it's really, for me, it's about like waking up from a suicide attempt just to a few months later realize that a friend overdosed and didn't make it. And the complex, and I just left it there. I didn't have to like fester on that feeling for the rest of that album. I got to honor that pain and that hurt and that frustration, and then that's where it stays. And Jesse and Sheila do phenomenal jobs, like, honoring it, honoring that, and giving themselves some humanity and just having that pain for a moment. And then it sits in some static, because sometimes you just have to sit in that uncomfortable moment for a while. So there's a little bit of reverb loops that happens that is a little unsettling, but so is healing, so is confronting that grief, and you know being able to look back at the people who I grieve in my life and offer them gratitude is the next step out of that hurt feeling. And so like that's how this album kind of like linearly works, as like a three-piece thing. So you go from grief, you work with your community to have that grief and to give it space and kindness and compassion, and then to move on with some forgiveness and gratitude towards the world that has been lost, and then you get some growth out of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Makes me think of the title of Miles Bullen's album, "Healing Hurts." Uh, he has a lyric, "Healing hurts like you're swallowing bruises."
Yep.
And
Oh, it's a good one.
yeah, I really resonate what you said too about, because I've also had some deep uh, losses, people I've loved dearly dying um, well before their time, and music is one of the ways I've processed grief, um,
Mhm.
and it's been essential in that. I don't know how I would have gotten through some of those um, periods without music. Um, and I don't know where I'd be today in that healing process without music. And just like you said, it's important to feel that, to sit with it and the uncomfortability of it. Back before I got sober, I had a very low tolerance for uncomfortable feelings. I had a
Mhm.
very low tolerance for pain or anger or sadness, and so I would numb out with alcohol. And getting sober, and things like therapy and 12 steps have helped me learn the importance of just feeling the discomfort and letting myself be sad, letting myself be angry. And then I also love what you said too about gratitude, because gratitude has really been, in some ways, an antidote to a lot of the deep, deep pain and hurt that comes with grief. Be finding
Mhm.
finding a place where, when I think about the person I lost, I start to immediately feel gratitude for having them in my life at all, as opposed to thinking about it and just immediately being full of rage. Um, and that's not something that necessarily happens automatically or organically, nor should it, because it's important to feel that rage. Um, but I think the hope is that with time we do find a place of acceptance and gratitude for their life, and that has definitely been true with the people that I've lost, especially my dad, who died in 2018 from cancer. And I'm just so grateful that I had a supportive, caring, loving dad. That's part of, you know, the whole folk punk dad thing I do. Is my hope is to give to other people what he gave to me, because I had the immense privilege, the rare privilege of having a father who was present and loving and gentle and kind, and creative, and I'm so grateful that I you know, I would much rather have that for the first 29 years of my life than a father figure who was um, abusive or whatever for, you know, for 60 years of my life, you know. So,
Mhm.
and that was the case with my dad, you know. My dad's dad lived a long time, but my dad's dad was an alcoholic who toward the end of his life did quit drinking, but never really healed, never really got better, never emotionally available. um, and so I feel exceptionally blessed to have had the dad that I have, and it's for me, when I think about him, I definitely do now, immediately think about the gratitude. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, like from
Yeah.
start to finish.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think back because you know, um, from from the moment where you start to offer gratitude, and even in some places where uh, the spiteful self doesn't want to give that gratitude, there really comes some growth. You know,
Yeah.
I think when I like for me, I've been hurt by people before, and in a sense, it when you get hurt by someone you love, that's grieving too. You were
Mm,
grieving a loss of and a future that you're not going to have, and uh, being able to look at somebody who has hurt me and offer them gratitude in places where it's deserved and forgiveness in places where it's deserved as well helps me see their humanity
yeah.
and starts to see charm in fallibility, and I'm able in return to give that to myself. I'm able to look back at times where I have hurt somebody and offer the forgiveness that I also dream I'd be able to get from them, but you know there's a closed wall there,
Yeah.
and for a reason. And
Mm,
you know being able to you know see see my worst selves as still a part of my identity
mm,
without it um telling me that I'm a bad person or telling me that I am undeserving of like love or forgiveness.
mm,
Those two, like the holding on to gratitude and forgiveness is something that is a driving moral compass for me, is really how I got out of the loop of self-hate and self-depreciation. And I listen, there's a lot of folk punk that like morally hurts my heart. You people who are young and they love Johnny Hobo, I'm glad. I was there when I was like 18, 19, but I listened to Johnny Hobo and I'm like, wow, this hurts my heart. I remember hating myself this much, and it's oddly nostalgic, but it's really hard to listen to. And getting to see Pat's growth and getting to see him discover his own humanity
mm,
is a beautiful thing, and I think it encouraged me to look for the same in myself. And so when you meet younger punks that are getting really into Johnny Hobo, I was like, I hope that ramshackle glory finds you soon enough before you start to really hurt yourself, because we are deserving of love, and I think that's the reason why we find punk. So many of my friends and myself included, when we found punk, is because we didn't belong anywhere else. I was hated everywhere I went. I was a runt. I was getting picked on. I was getting queer bashed. I didn't know where to go, and punk was my safety. Punk, and I was able to find community and love. So if I found punk rock because I just like deserved love and community, then I can stay in punk rock and to see in myself that like love and community is a real thing.
mm. Yeah, beautifully said. definitely agree with Pat the Bunny and that journey, and how, yeah, the hope is that people do find the love that they're looking for, um,
Mhm.
and finding the love for themselves, which is and others, and receiving authentic love from others. And it's a lifelong journey, because growing up, we're so often taught how to judge ourselves or judge others, or hate ourselves or others, or maybe we're just at a point where, like for me, I struggled a lot with being really, really hard on myself, partially because I went through a good number of years where I wasn't a very good person. I think I had a good heart, but I was doing a lot of really harmful things. And it can be hard to love yourself in the midst of that. And so it was really helpful for me to grow and stop doing some of those things, and it became easier to love myself because of that growth.
Mhm. That is relatable deeply, because I, I had a great sense of hate towards myself. I mean, and I think a lot of that came from trauma, as well as, the multi-million-dollar corporation propaganda machine that is capitalism, that is there to tell you you're not good enough.
Yep.
And, the world around me told me I wasn't good enough, and eventually I believed it. But sitting in that moment of believing that you're a terrible person doesn't get you anywhere. It keeps you there. And it's hard to get out of that cycle. But I want to see a push in punk to really acknowledge that, especially if I'm gonna, like, I don't want to lose any more friends. I want to see my friends in the next generation of punks realize that, like drinking excessively and hating yourself isn't going to, like, take care of that. And I think that's another one of the reasons why I like Marissa's art so much, is it encourages. I want to see more encouragement in punk rock, because if we talk about punk rock as a form of liberation, you know deconstructing shame and guilt in a, like, Catholic sense that's been forced down our throat, and finding it in ourselves as a emotion we can navigate through, is a beautiful thing. And I just want to start seeing more punks feel encouraged.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, really well said. I love Marissa's art too, for the same reasons. Yeah, and it's so important because I think people who are drawn to punk and folk punk are often really wounded people, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. And so it's so important for those spaces to be safe and encouraging and uplifting, and kind, and um, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I would love to know, with your EP, what is your hope for, whoever may listen to it? What is your hope for that person's experience with your art?
I I had a conversation with that friend that I lost, he was a trans woman. And I'm older. I was older than she was, and I was having a very similar conversation about um about growing and learning to love yourself. And I we had this moment where we sobbed and held each other, and we were sobbing because I was able to find a moment of peace and love and clarity in my life where I wanted to be. And it was something that she was able to see in herself for a second, that, oh, I can. I can find happiness through all the hurt that I have been through and through all of the anguish that I have been through. There is still hope and there's still a future. And that future is gone and that hurts a lot. But I hope that people, especially queer people who have to navigate a different level of shame, can listen through the album and, honor their hurt, because it's there and you can't ignore it, and running from it doesn't do anything. And showing yourself some compassion and is a great way to let that hurt not be so uncomfortable, and that there can be moments of joy that are going to be worth holding on to. And if the more you sit with those uncomfortable feelings, the more clarity you find in yourself. Because I found a lot of clarity in myself through sitting with those uncomfortable feelings, swallowing those bruises. And I'm glad to be here today, and there's just so many people I wish could still be here. And yeah, that's what I hope people will find safety in this album, a moment of, hey, this person was vulnerable in a way that I don't think most music is often vulnerable, and I hope that they find comfort in that.
That's very beautiful. Beautiful. And it's a wonderful and realistic aspiration for the album and the art. And yeah, I'm really really excited that you're putting it out there. And it's also a really meaningful way to honor those people that we've lost, those people that you've lost and your dear friend who passed. I think in many ways, through the art we create about them or for them, it's a beautiful way to honor them and keep their spirit and memory alive in that sense.
And it was a year today that Iante passed too. So pardon the tears, but and it's when I was working on the instrumental for the first song, I have my like Super Nintendo and my Nintendo 64 and all my bells and whistles all hooked up to my receiver, so I can play Super Mario Brothers with the subwoofer. But also it makes it so I can sample my stuff, and so a lot of the samples that I sample from hard media. And so I was working on this instrumental, and I put in a game that I've never played before, Secrets of Mana. I've been meaning to get to it. And, I was just kind of looking, I was like, maybe I'll be able to find a sample on a Nintendo game. I don't know. Let's give it a shot. The first time through, when I hit record to check levels, the loading screen theme was perfect. Same BPM, same key, and it was elegant. I was like, wow, I don't have to do anything. This just fits here so perfectly. And that instrumental kind of got really picked at, really worked on and worked through. And after I got apart from Jesse Williams and the poem from Shiva on the song, I was like, I kind of want to sample Iante. And I sampled Iante covering Shiva, a song about their lost friend and their friend Kat that passed away. And it seemed like a great way to like honor the fact that like fentanyl is hitting the world pretty bad these days, and that these stories of these people carry on because people love them. And that was another moment of sample serendipity. Like the sample just seamlessly fell in there, didn't take any work or anything. It just fit, and it was elegant and gave such a beauty to her voice. and yeah, I wanted to share that story because it's, the dropout part where Eonte sings that, like, it's so elegant, but it's also from a Super Nintendo game. And I didn't really do much to it. It just,
Wow.
and you probably, I don't think that it, like, it doesn't have any like nerd rap vibes to it. Like, it doesn't immediately go, oh, this is from a video game. Like,
Right. Yeah.
it's kind of conspicuous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Um, wow, that's a cool story.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I think we should probably wrap up in the next few
That's
minutes.
good.
And I um, was wondering, could you tell viewers a little bit about where they can listen to the album, where they can follow you on social media, and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, all the things that yet come along with being a musician that aren't music.
Right, exactly.
This album comes out on December 21st. Or 20 It comes out on the solstice, the 21st, yes. On Spotify, Bandcamp, like most of the streaming services, and like under Lil Lavedy, and can be found. Also, I have in Instagram. That's probably where I'm the most active with social media. But yeah, it is a chore for me to have an online presence. It's not something that I particularly enjoy. That's why I wanted to do something like this, because for online presence, like, I just like conversating with people, and that's something I enjoy. Not taking 1,000 selfies a week and getting caring about insights or traffic or what time to post. All that interests me. Just me sit down and talk with someone and talk about my music in a vulnerable way.
Yeah. This has been a really wonderful, lovely conversation.
Agreed.
I'm so glad you reached out to me about doing this. I've really enjoyed getting to talk with you and speak with you about your EP and your life and your art. It's been really lovely to connect with you. I know we've been connected, only really through messaging and texting. So it's so awesome to have this conversation with you and feel like I know you more by the end of it.
Agreed. And
Uh,
I reached out to you, I think, specifically because, we were talking about that softness and punk. And, I feel like one of the things that I really wanted to capture in this EP is kind of what you capture through like your TikTok and your other creations, is that like vulnerability is great.
mm,
And, softness is great. And like, I felt like we would have had this conversation. Like, this is the exact conversation I was hoping to have. So
Wonderful.
thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been really great. And are you based in Albuquerque? Is that right?
I am, yes.
Okay,
In the
very cool.
middle of the desert.
I'm gonna be coming through New Mexico in 2022, and I would
Yes.
love to get together and play a show.
I love that idea a lot.
Okay, awesome.
Where our venues are scattered right now. I don't know where they are at the moment. So, I think it's rebuilding after the destruction of the world. But
Yeah,
um, I would love to help you out with that, and I'd love to make that happen.
awesome. We'll do it. I have a friend who I lived with in San Antonio. We made music together, and we were in a musical improv troupe together too. His name's Jeremy Zenner, and he moved to Albuquerque like a month or two ago.
Amazing.
So maybe we can get him on the bill too.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe I can connect y'all if you just want to hang out or get coffee. You're both awesome, lovely people. So,
Oh,
uh,
I love that idea.
okay, cool, cool. Sounds great. Yay. Okay, well, stay in touch and we'll put something together next summer. That's gonna be awesome.
Awesome. I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It'll be great to meet in person.
Agreed. Take care of yourself,
Hey,
Will.
stay in touch. Bye bye.
Bye.